right. So we've had some pretty sweet moves, huh? On ES and gold and tons of stuff. But I wanted to make a video to try to communicate to you, things you can sort of look for to maybe try to catch these moves. Okay? Because there's signs, there's a story that charts tell that sometimes if you're kind of privy to it, you can assume this might happen, right? And there'll be little clues here and there, right? So for starters, pause and read that. And I don't know if you've watched any of my videos, but if you have, I talk a lot about kind of like liquidity, okay? Because I use liquidity a lot in my trading. And liquidity creates kind of large moves, The reason, some trend lines might work has a lot to do with liquidity and where liquidity is and stopping out, short sellers and making them cover and also things like liquidity grabs occurring before moves happening, right? Like stopping out all these participants so other participants might take their positions, right? This is kind of what I mean about liquidity. Again, I go into it really in depth in some of my videos, so if this confuses you, just check those out, right? So both of these things are kind of evident right here, okay? So I always assume price will continue whatever trend it's in, okay? Currently, we're in a bullish trend, right? Currently, ES has always been in a bullish trend for its entire life. But of course, there's little pullbacks. But I'm assuming we're going to continue. Okay, I always assume continuation before I assume, that we're rolling over. Okay, and why is that? Well, I'm a trend follower. I don't pick tops. I don't pick bottoms. I don't try to predict when the market's about to die, and it might. For all I know, I'm sure tons of people are screaming that from the rooftops, and that's fine. But I'm assuming that we're doing pretty much exactly what I showed you. We're in an uptrend, and we're consolidating in some fashion, right? And we're going to grab liquidity from these lows to push higher to all-time highs, right? Which is what we do over and over again in perpetuity, right? Now, I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong and price could just melt, and that's fine. But regardless of that, the commonality in these two things is that price will come down to this low and at least test it, right? So with that mentality, we're in an uptrend and we have a range, right? And furthermore, we aren't in a downtrend, but there is, right, liquidity here. And I like 1 hour charts because I'm a day trader, right? So going much higher than that's like not necessarily super helpful, right? You could argue, and I will argue, that the fundamentals of why this creates a move has a lot to do with these liquidity points, okay? People are shorting, putting their stops above these areas. So once this guy gets squeezed and stops out and has to cover his position on the ask, it bumps into this guy who gets stopped out, has to cover his position on the ask, who bumps into this guy, gets stopped out, and so on and so forth, right? Creates a move. If we kind of look here, we have liquidity points, right? And when I see kind of big, strong wicks, right, that get rinsed out and then a big move comes out of it, that's kind of what I mean. Big old strong wick. Big old strong moves, stuff like this. It's like this liquidity pushed. Oh, and sellers came in hard, right? But we're aware that there's liquidity here. There's stop losses under these swing lows, right? And furthermore, they might be fairly large positions because look at the moves that these created, right? And kind of another point about liquidity that I'll make. Let's say, people love support and resistance and supply and demand zones, right? Let's say this is some support level. Price is moving in whatever direction. Comes down, tests support, price moves up, right? Comes down, tests support, price moves up. And every time price comes down and tests these levels, you can assume, some new group of buyers is coming in. And of course, some of these guys that got in here are selling here and they're exiting, and maybe they're re-entering here and exiting here, but that doesn't matter. You can assume that to some degree we're picking up new participants every time we do this, right? And you might be adding stop losses every time we do this. It might be $5 million worth of stop losses and now it's $10 million worth of stop losses. Oh, now it's $15 million worth of stop losses. I'm obviously oversimplifying, but this is kind of a mentality I'm trying to explain to you, right? So now we have, $30 million worth of stop losses or whatever. So now if price comes down and starts stopping these people out, it's going to create quite a move, much more than, if we just kind of came up and tested it once and only 5 million got in and then those people got kind of stopped out and then price just kind of recovers because it wasn't that big of a move it wasn't that many people stopped out, or whatever. This is kind of a mentality that I kind of have, if we are testing a level over and over and over again and buyers can't seem to, break this, whatever this area is, right? We can assume at some point these buyers are going to either give up or get overpowered, right? And what do you think about my drawings? Aren't they pretty sweet? I could go like this and go like that, Are you familiar? So now with that mentality, right? All those things I just showed you. For starters, on a higher time frame, we have a range. In this range, if we could, before I saw this breakdown, I could have assumed that there's kind of a flat top here and liquidity because we keep bumping into it. And if buyers overpower whatever sellers are here, that would cause a breakout, right? So I was watching for that. I saw MA starting to spread here. I was like, okay, I could long out of this. But the other flip side of that coin is there's obviously liquidity, from this area. There's liquidity here. There's liquidity in all these points potentially. I mean, they probably got taken here, but the illustration I'm trying to point out is that there is liquidity down here, right? And if we kind of do the little reaccumulation model, right, grabbing the liquidity to push to all-time highs, this is what I'm trying to point out here, right? Like price might come down to just below this liquidity area to push to all-time highs, right? And regardless of if that happens or we break down and melt, once this kind of breaks and this waterfall kind of starts happening, I sort of assume we'll come somewhere down to these lows, right? Which now at this point, it might be a little scary to take shorts here, but when you're up here, it can be helpful, right? Furthermore, kind of looking at this, again, with liquidity in mind, we have points like this, these are liquidity points of liquidity, all right? Right down here. This is where I was targeting actually, 58.48, sorry. We didn't get there yet anyway. We might not. But so when I kind of saw this start to break down, I told you I like to watch the 1 hour, right? And I like to wait for moving averages to be spread out in the direction that I want to trade in, okay? And then I take, trend lines long, right? Stuff like that. Some kind of trend line long, right? Because the moving averages are telling me that's the direction we're moving in. There's a little more nuance in that, but that's simply put, that's what I do. So I'm not trading when things are choppy, but once MAs kind of start spreading out, if I have other reasons to be short, I'll start looking for short opportunities, right? And so once this kind of broke down, I did get like one little short here one day, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. But now that these MAs are spread, and I think that this low is going to be approached, I can start looking for short opportunities, okay? I can start just keeping my eye open for places where liquidity has built and might break down, right? Things like, this. Things like, this, right? Things like, like this. You know what I'm saying? And on top of, these trends that are breaking and their liquidity points, right? I'm looking left at the liquidity that's over here, right? And I'm mainly talking about kind of today and the past 3 days is really what I want to focus on here. So if we look here, we see kind of that drawing I drew, right? Price came into this area, bounced, came into this area, bounced, came into this area, bounced. So every time it's coming down here, buyers are trying to push it up and flip the trend and start going long, right? And something is keeping that from happening. So sellers are getting more aggressive than the buyers at some point up here. And then we sell off, and then maybe they attempt to add to their positions, and they just can't break this area. So we know that there's liquidity, we assume there's liquidity in these areas, right? This area. And today is really why I want to talk about this, because this move was sweet, dude. Knowing all this stuff, what kind of happened today? Well, we had some short setups that were gorgeous through here, and then we hit that area and bounced, right? And then things kind of started getting a little choppy. So I started getting a little, I took some morning wins, and then in here, where we're not respecting MAs at all, price is just kind of chopping. It's bouncing off of the previous day's close, which is nice. And I took a short, and then we didn't push down, and then I stopped out for break even, and I'm taking like a couple little crappy little trades in here, right? And then see this, and we start pushing back up again. I'm like, oh, screw this. I'm sitting on my hands. There's no need for me to trade this. MAs are not being respected. They're not showing me a direction. I'm good. Okay. Until, I started to notice that, this kind of area had been built a little bit here. And then I felt that we started to respect some moving averages in this area, right? On the 15-minute, I was like, wait a minute. Ooh, are we starting to respect this 20 EMA on the 15-minute? Which we were. So then I kind of bumped down, okay? And then I just started looking for other points of liquidity, which you could view this as liquidity, right? Start to break it. And then, what sort of happens? Again, time frame might not matter to you, but moving averages start kind of rolling over. We can't really push this high. We start seeing, little kind of flags breaking down as the moving averages set up, and then we start respecting, the 10 EMA, right? I did start kind of shorting up here, very, very nervously, but I liked the 15-minute. But then as we kind of started going, this is where somebody who's short has kind of a decision to make, right? Are they covering in this area and closing their trade, or are they going to try and let this go, right? And try and get a breakdown, And I was part of that latter school of thought, right? There's just such an outrageous amount of liquidity here, these lows, that the chances of us, starting to respect these MAs to the downside, first of all, on the 1 hour time frame, MAs are spread. That's like step one, right? Step one, spread and pointing down. So I know that I want to be short bias. I know I'm short bias because of that. It's part of my system, right? It keeps me from flip-flopping and getting my butt kicked. So that's step one. I know I'm short bias because of that. I'm not even interested in taking any longs, right? So then on lower time frames, when I start seeing the same things starting to kind of happen, things spreading out, MA starting to get respected, that's when I sit up, right? I start paying attention. So what I ended up doing was just taking the short. I added to it at one point up here. And then I decided I'm going for the gusto, brother. I'm going for 58.48 down here. And did I get it? No, but I was able to trail this position right into close, with pretty much no issue, right? Because we didn't pull back really in any fashion, right? And so I guess what I'm trying to point out is there's like a story being told here, right? If I just erase all this crap, clear it, bro. There's a story being told here. There's all this just liquidity resting here that just, if we start the waterfall, it's going to be taken out, and there's at least some likely chance that we test this low at some point, right? And that's kind of all you need to know on top of applying your system to the short side, right? These are all just kind of clues that point you in a direction. You know what I mean? And so it worked out beautifully. And will we continue? I don't know. I mean, we're a little bit extended, but sure, if this low breaks, we're probably coming down to whatever my target was with the 5850-ish, 58.48, I think is what it was, whatever. So there's that. Then pretty much the same thing happened on gold. And I'm going to show you, I didn't really write too much about the ES situation, but listen, before I even start talking about this, no, this is not a paid Discord. No, I'm not going to ever charge you money for anything. This is a free Discord that I have. If you want to join, just let me know. It's free, dude. We just hang out and talk shit, I had posted this the other day. On gold, there's so much liquidity around here. Let me pull up gold, obviously. Makes way more sense to do that, doesn't it? Do-dee-dee-doo-dow-dow-dee-dee-doo-doo. So the 25th is right here, right? This morning is where I'm posting this. Yeah. On gold, there is so much liquidity around 29.30 and 29.44, right? So 29.30s right around here, 29.44. I'm talking about all of this, all these wicks, all this liquidity sitting here, right? I expect these levels to rinse out at some point, and I do think we will revisit the 2885 lows, okay, to hopefully reaccumulate and then continue pushing. Much below 2880, my bias will likely flip bearish. Otherwise, over 2974 high, I'll also look for long continuations, up here. So if we broke out and didn't do this, I would also look for longs, right? But this is the same story that I'm trying to tell you on ES, right? We have this range, and I assume that price at some point might come down here, reaccumulate, and then push higher. And we happen to have this just beautiful amount of liquidity just sitting here waiting to be just taken out and given us a nice, delicious snack of a move, right? And of course, again, I like to start on a 1 hour. So we go to the 1 hour. You know, I have this liquidity in mind, right? Gorgeous trend line that if it breaks might set off a waterfall. Guess what? It did. It totally did. And then guess what it created? Another area of fantastic liquidity in an environment where, you know, we have a large time frame trend break. We have spread out moving averages, which are being respected by price to some degree on the 1 hour. Then if, you know, it happened to bump down, will I see similar kind of things? Yeah, like I'll see areas again of liquidity sitting here, you know, and then moving averages starting to spread out and be respected, and just little, you know, areas where you can get short either on low breaks or on bear flags or whatever the flippin' flap you want to do, brother. But the whole point that I'm trying to make is when the higher time frame is telling you a story, you can bump down into the lower time frames and take advantage of that, you know, and it can create some pretty sweet, luscious moves, right? Does that make any sense? Is that helpful to you? I hope it is, you know. I'm now just hoping that price kind of does whatever, kind of chops around, maybe even comes down a little lower or whatever. I could totally see it coming to like about here and doing some little scroopy dippy rip rap skadoosh. Okay. And again, could I be wrong and price dies? Absolutely. But I would be waiting for some kind of, you know, confirmation of that. I don't have that yet, you know. But anyways, maybe post in the comments if this helps you. You can subscribe. I love subscribers. That's always fun. And if you want to join the Discord, yeah, just reach out to me, man. It's free. Like I'm not going to ever charge money for this. So, let me know if that was helpful. You know, there's a story to every chart. Okay. Let's see. You know what? Well, I have you. I'm pretty sure the Russell did something similar. It did, didn't it? It did, didn't it, mate? Let's look at the higher time frame just for giggles. Where'd my 4 hour? Oh, I'm on the 4 hour. Idiot. Yeah. Okay. Range, right? We have some range. This is ugly. Wow, this is choppy sideways crap. But even in choppy sideways crap, we can see that there's liquidity here, right? Not there, right here. There you go. That there's liquidity here. That if the waterfall starts, there might be a move for us to take advantage of upon the MAs spreading out and getting delicious and wonderful and just taking little moveroon skis, right? Does that help? I hope it helps. Let me know. Bye-bye.